I make your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. I am the lead host and the founder of Movies TV Mad over on Twitter and here on YouTube. On today's show, shortly, slightly later on, I'm going to give you a brief, non-spoiler review of the Blue Beetle movie as I saw it yesterday. But first of all, I've got to talk about my disdain for movie, TV shows and streaming early reactions. I am sick and tired of them. Sick. I'm fed up of the bullshit, each one of them saying the same things. And who are the people responsible for doing these early reactions on a multitude of entertainment? Surely if we could see them as they were writing their early reactions, they would go all fucking Pinocchio. I don't like people being conned and lied to, of course. The odd white lie, we all do it, as Dr. Gregory House says, everybody lies, and I believe that to a point. But these people are taking advantage of the innocent and naive who don't know what they're doing. And they're people who seem very, very respectable. There's a young woman called the Aspiring Kryptonian. I'm sure we all know her. She seems like a great girl. She probably is. But she bullshits her reactions. And many of them do. Now, I follow these people. I quite like these people. But what they do is disgusting. Now, these are a couple of the reactions I've heard, early reactions I've heard from Blue Beetle. It's much better than I thought it would be. So this is a very, very smart quote. It's quick, it's short, it makes it sound like he enjoyed the movie. It's actually very smart. He doesn't say he likes the movie. All he says is, it's better than he thought it would be. So basically, if anyone comes after him as a liar, he can say, no, I didn't say I liked it. I just said it was much better than I thought it would be. The Latino representation was brilliant. Now, if you're a white critic or a white influencer, right, how do you know what it's like to be a Latino, Latinx? So how do you know what's great Latinx representation and what's bad Latinx representation? But why pull that? Why is something being good or bad representation got any place in a reaction of entertainment or in a review, right? What's it got to do with fucking anything? Personally, that ain't gonna put my finely formed butt on the cinema theatre seat to go and see a movie. I don't care if it's good or bad representation. I'm glad this is a Latinx movie, that it's about a Latinx family. That's great. In my brief, non-spoiler review, I'll talk about the one thing that pisses me off about this movie. And it's a big deal, and it's typical of these extremists and it's of their propaganda, because they cannot just represent a community. They have to be hateful to white people at the same time and go over and over their histrionics. More on that a little bit later on. But I despise these reactions. In fact, I had a little tussle with someone on Twitter, an influencer, who started saying things like the best post-Christopher Nolan comic book movie. That is a disgusting thing to say. That is a disgusting lie. Blue Beetle, as I've seen it, we'll get into the brief non-spoiler review, is merely a solid, average movie. CBN. We'll go into it. The best post-Christopher Nolan movie. What a fucking lie. So anyway, this guy goes, I've never lied on a review. See what he did? Even that's a lie. Even that's an edited quote to sliver out of what I was accusing him of. No, I wasn't reacting to your review because an early reaction isn't a review. Is it now? So basically, you are a liar. You do always lie. You lie for access. 90% of these fuckers lie for access. This is a system that has to stop everyone immediately. When this industrial action is over, we must change the way Tinseltown is run. And one of those things that fundamentally must be changed are these early reactions. But that can only start with the White House and the Senate, right, and the House of Representatives looking at Hollywood, looking at Tinseltown and creating an organization to police the platform. Because Hollywood has made so much money for America, the United States of America, and kept, made it so powerful, because Hollywood in the past has been an excuse to print money. Nobody from the White House has ever interfered in the running of Hollywood. But even in the UK, we have Ofcom. There are strict structures, infrastructures in place. But Hollywood is a cowboy town, and of course America is run by a bunch of cowboys. We already know that. But how can you have an industry that's not policed in any way? In fact, they police themselves. They now have these people who instruct people how to pretend to have sex in a movie, TV show or streaming movie, right? I think it's pathetic. There's no need for it. I'd rather there was no kissing or shagging in a movie. It's called an intimacy coach or whatever it is, right? I'm sure you're kind of familiar with them. I think they're pathetic. It's just something the extreme left have introduced. It doesn't bring any safety. It gets in the director's way, even though people like James Gunn claim they like it. I tell you what, when you look at James Gunn's historical tweets, it's just more bullshit from him, right? But anyway, no one is policing Hollywood from the outside. This is problematic. Parents with child actors have to watch over their own children. They have to have special cameras so they can see that their children are safe during their time on location or, basically, on a set. And, this is disgusting. The White House should create an organization to police this industry, because that's one of the problems. And if they did, we wouldn't have this AI situation, right? AI is only becoming a problem in Hollywood for a reason, because there's no one to police that industry. And policing yourselves doesn't count. Me Too, Time's Up were formulated by people from inside the industry. And we found out a lot of disturbing things about these organizations. Mostly the funding for Black Lives Matter comes from Hollywood as well. Black Lives Matter was formed to help black people who are not making enough money to make sure their families are fed and clothed properly. But I would tell you that 90% of the Black Lives Matter's money is not going to these families that need them, because these extremists are the biggest of con artists, and this is where they are in Hollywood. So, but if we go back to the actual situation about early reactions, if the White House did have an infrastructure for entertainment to be policed, these early reactions would never be allowed. Let me ask you something. If we're getting reviews, why are we actually needing early reactions? Early reactions are just another part of the marketing. And the people who do them know damn well what's expected of them. Lies, lies, and more lies. But what's even worse about this? These lies no longer work. We heard the initial reaction from the latest Indiana Jones, right? The Dial of Destiny, which flopped. We had positive initial reactions for the Flash movie. They didn't work. The movie flopped. Same with Shazam! Fury of the Gods. The movie flopped. So why do you have it as part of your marketing? When I see these initial reactions on my Twitter feed, I fucking cringe. Now, the guy that I clashed with over this called me a Snyder bro. Yes, I love Zack Snyder as a filmmaker and a person. I love his DC movies, adore them. I wish we carried on with his plan. But I'm not a Snyder bro. I love DC all round, and I happen to admire what Zack did for the DCEU. I wasn't attacking your so-called early reaction stroke opinion of Blue Beetle because I want the movie to fail and because I'm a Snyder bro. It's because you were fucking lying. And it was obvious you were lying. You didn't like the movie. Early reactions, everyone, must be knocked on the head immediately. They're a con, they're a rip-off, they're outrageous, they're blatant lies, and it's all about influencers keeping their access. And I'm sick and tired of people gaining in this world because they've happened to buy 1 million fake followers on Twitter or YouTube. I've never told anyone to follow me on YouTube from my friends and my family. Even if there's bots following me, it's nothing to do with me. I haven't orchestrated any situation on my social media. I wanted to see if I could become successful naturally. I don't market myself. I share my daily videos on my Twitter and that's it. I wanted to see how far I could get naturally. Obviously, so far after 4 years, not very far, and that's okay. But at least I'm honest, at least I'm genuine, and at least you know where you stand with me. And if I make a mistake, if I utter an untruth from an opinion, I'll take it back. I'll say, yes, I was wrong. I've done it many times. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. There's nothing to be ashamed of there. But these early reactions have to stop because we can see through them now and we're sick and tired of them. Now I'm going to do my non-spoiler review, my brief non-spoiler review of Blue Beetle, and it isn't going to be pretty. Now I may let slip a couple of things, I don't think that I will, but just in case. If you don't want to know what happens in Blue Beetle at all, you better go now and come back and watch this after you've seen the movie. Predominantly, I'm going to talk about the use of the called name and what they did or didn't do with Ted Kord in this movie. As I explained earlier, Hollywood is on its knees and they're on the verge of bankruptcy and receivership because they've become so extremist with their propaganda. Anti-straight white men. Angry straight white men from 25 to 55, around my age group, by the way, and many of yours who follow me. I'm also followed by women. I know that, not as many as I am men, but there is a concerted campaign from the extreme left in Hollywood and the Twitter people against straight white males. We saw what happened with Brie Larson's utterance and disgusting words in that pre-Captain Marvel release press conference, right? We remember the hatred for her afterwards. And they accused people of being toxic and horrible, but she actually was the horrible one. She was the one being sexist, right? And being a misogynist against men. But anyway, this is what I'm trying to explain to you. Because this movie, yet again, I think that Walter Hamada's point of his DCEU from the Flash movie onwards was to be very inclusive, representative, but also a lot of extremism. We were going to go very woke with the DCEU when they changed the timeline. I mean, we all know what the Batgirl movie was going to be. I certainly have been told that that movie was very woke, and I don't doubt that situation for a minute. So, they took Ted Kord's name, the name Kord, in vain, and they bastardized it. They bastardized the name Ted Kord. They bastardized Kord. They really, really used Kord in a certain way, replaced him, not him as such, but they brought in other characters and gave them the Kord name. Now, one of these people is a Latinx actor. How is a Latinx person got the name called? Then we've got Susan Sarandon's character. Now, look, I'm a simple bloke, but I do know this. Ted Kord is an iconic character in the annals of DC Comics. He's actually the more beloved version of Blue Beetle. So personally, I am disgusted that they took the Kord name and did what they did with it. Simple as that. Because I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong. But we shouldn't be surprised with what they do these days. So they did use the name Kord. They did have references to Ted Kord, but it isn't in a cool way. I think it's in a despicable way. They've taken the straight white male version of Blue Beetle, put him in their fist, screwed him up like an empty beer can, and tossed him over their shoulders. This is what these people do. This is all these people are good for. Also, the marketing of this movie hasn't been great. How many times have we been shown pictures of the family? You know, the Reyes family, and I'm thinking, is promoting the Reyes family really going to get the general audience to go and see this movie? Because this movie is only kind of predicted to get around a 30 million domestic opening weekend. And let's be clear about this. I don't care if this movie only cost 80 to 100 or 120 million to make. That is shit. Not only does it prove that people are not going to comic book movies anymore and won't watch any old shit, not that they were watching any old DC shit anyway, but it just goes to show you that the Walter Hamada plan was shit and it was never going to work. So that's the negatives about Blue Beetle, how they treat Ted Kord, how they bastardized that name, and how they took that character's name in vain. It's simply outrageous. This is what Hollywood like to do. They grab hold of properties. They grab hold of Barbie, mold her in to their extremism and propaganda and gaslight her, right? And try and divide men and women. This is what they want to do. But at least with Barbie, they understood not to do that within the marketing and just use Oppenheimer to promote the movie. That's the only reason Barbie's still making so much money. Very, very clever plan. It worked. Yes, they were dishonest about the movie and people fell for it hook, line and sinker. Some people choose not to see the extremism in that movie and it's up to them. So that's my negative issue about Blue Beetle. Now, away from Ted Kord, actually, this is a very, very well-made movie. For example, the costume, the Blue Beetle costume, worn by Jamie Reyes, is practically made. It's not a CGI suit. It's stunning. It's brilliant. The VFX is used to brilliant effect. This probably could be the first DC EU movie for a while that actually has really, really good VFX. So I enjoyed that element of it. Yes, the portrayal of the young actor from Cobra Kai playing Jamie Reyes, aka Blue Beetle, forgot his name. Always forget names when I'm on air. How do I do that? It's Xolo Maradona. That's his name. Not pronouncing it right, but Xolo Maradona's performance as Jamie Reyes, aka Blue Beetle, is wonderful. It's full of life. It really works. He was always a great actor or a good, solid young actor. This was a big role for him. He's done a really, really good job. He has got a big future within the DCU. James Gunn's already said that if we do continue with James Gunn's plan, because Gunn just keeps on digging himself deeper and deeper holes. But yeah, at the moment, that's where we're going with that. He hasn't handled things properly in terms of him interfering with the DCEU movies. But we'll see if his movies and his content is going to take DC where we need it to go. So Xolo was very good. in the role. I really liked the supporting cast. I thought they were all brilliant, and I enjoyed it. The humour is a mix and mash. I think, listen, some of the humour is a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit not funny when your friend tells you a joke and you're just standing there, like that, thinking, this ain't funny. You go, like that. But a lot of the humour does sit. There are some really, really compelling, dramatic moments that you will like in this film. All in all, the characterizations are mainly good. There are rewritings of history in terms of the called name. Unfortunately, yes, Susan Sarandon is pretty much the best thing about this movie because she's the best actor and most famous actor in the movie. So that's understandable, and that's why they either wanted her or Sharon Stone in a character they created for the film. She's not from DC Comics. And basically, she's a representation of the bad white person. Basically, this is what I'm talking about. This is why Hollywood is on the verge of bankruptcy and receivership. They just can't help themselves. It's not enough for them to be inclusive. They have to hit you over the head from the histrionics that may be what white people have done to, let's say, the Latinx community or the black community, right? It's all about their politics. It's all about their extremism. So you don't get to enjoy a movie when you're being smashed over the head constantly with their extremist messaging. And that's the problem. But I think behind their extremism, there's a solid, enjoyable, fun, entertaining movie at the very least. Is it a memorable movie? No. I mean, it has got vibes of the first Iron Man movie. Obviously, you don't have Robert Downey Jr. And I mean, no matter how good that I've just said that Xolo was, he's no Robert Downey Jr. But I think there's an enjoyable movie, as I say there. It's okay. It's not terrible. I mean, I enjoyed elements of the Flash movie, but it had problems within the movie, notably the writing, the storytelling, and clearly the style of VFX they were going for. The VFX was like someone had just thrown lots of colours of paint on the screen and said, fuck it, we don't need to turn it into art. That's how I felt about the Flash movie. Clearly, I think that Blue Beetle is a tighter movie. It's certainly a more standalone movie. And I think DC fans, genuine DC fans who have got no agendas against anyone, will go there and say, yeah, I didn't like really what they were doing with the called name and all of that, but generally it's an okay movie. It was never my intention to come in here and totally shit on something that I thought was okay. And ultimately, I think the director, Luis Manos Soto, I think that's his name. I think he's a really good director. I think he did a solid job. He's not Coppola. He's not Scorsese. Saying I always say about James Gunn, there are no Scorseses coming through via younger, upcoming directors. It's a shame. We don't have very good writers out there, generally, or directors. When I talk about very good, I'm talking about on a high level. I'm talking about Tarantino, Coppola, Scorsese, Spielberg, and Nolan, who probably is one of the last great directors to come through the conveyor belt. Now, luckily, he's in his 50s, so we've got Nolan for quite a few years, and we're very lucky to do so. But he ain't going to touch CBMs anymore. He did the CBMs. I mean, he did 3 Batman movies, then he co-wrote Man of Steel, and I think all of those movies have got Nolan's, including Man of Steel, have got Nolan's footprints and fingerprints all over them. And that serves those movies so much better. But the people that Hollywood are bringing in are clearly extreme left extremists. And that's the problem. And this movie is seeped through that messaging. And it's a bit like Barbie. If you look beyond that messaging and that extremism, you'll see an okay, enjoyable, entertaining, but mid movie. But not a bad movie. But it's clear this movie isn't going to make much money unless it surprises us. I think it's released, on the 18th of August. So it'll be very, very interesting how we get on with that. But yeah, as I say, Probably the best thing about this movie is the cast. They're very relatable. They're very likable. Their performances are very, very good. I liked the score. Listen, if I give you kind of a measuring jug on how I rate, DC movies at the moment. So I look at everything. So I look at Aquaman and beyond. So I think Aquaman is an epic, brilliant movie. Despite it being the first movie within the Hamada regime, I think that James Wan did an excellent movie, and I feel Will Bill wrote a great screenplay as well. And by the way, Will Bill was involved within Zack's Justice League as well, and it tells. So Will Bill was very much part of Aquaman. So I love Aquaman. Shazam is mid, solid at most. Made just under 400 million. Not a lot of money, but made a profit, right? Okay, very, very forgettable. Birds of Prey, full of extremism, okay in places, not good enough. The Suicide Squad is an excellent, slick movie that I enjoyed and didn't make the money I felt it deserved. Wonder Woman 84 is a terrible movie, and if it didn't have the pandemic as an excuse, it would have been a huge flop. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, I've spoken about. It's a very mid movie, too much lame, cringy comedy, too MCU. The Flash movie, I don't understand what they were attempting. As I say, I think Ezra Miller's performance was the best thing about that movie. Whatever I think about Ezra in terms of their conduct, I still feel their performance was the best thing about the movie. But I'm not going to say that Ezra Miller was bad casting as the Flash, because under Zack Snyder, I actually thought Ezra was a great Barry Allen and a great Flash. It's a bit like Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. When she's being directed under Snyder, she's brilliant. And that includes the first movie, because I believe, and I have evidence of this because I've been told this, that he ghost directed the first Wonder Woman movie. And we know for sure he co-wrote the screenplay with Alan Heinberg of that movie. So that's why that movie's great. Also, they made a big decision in the first Wonder Woman film, knowing that Gal Gadot couldn't lead a movie. She can't. She's not a strong enough performer. So that's why Chris Pine, a much superior artist and performer, was co-leading that movie. And he covered up Gal's weaknesses. And it worked. And that's why that movie is fabulous. But take away Zack Snyder's VFX team, take away Zack Snyder's visionary writing and directing, you've got Wonder Woman 84. They brought in Pine again to cover up for Gadot's weaknesses, because you should know people's strengths and weaknesses, because all artists have them, including me. But this time, because the writing and directing was so bad, Pine couldn't cover up Gal's weaknesses as an actor. I think Gal is a brilliant Wonder Woman. But as I said earlier this week, if Henry goes, which he has as Superman, she has to go as well. You're either rebooting something or you're not. There's no in-between, and the problem with Gunn is he's trying to create an in-between, and it's lazy, it's disingenuous, and the handling of Cavill, how they brought him back and got rid of him again, is disgusting. And James, we're never going to let you forget that. You came in and you changed something that had been put in motion. Why Adby and DeLuca couldn't have run DC as well as, WB Pictures, why it couldn't be under their remit and stick to what they were doing, why bring in Gunn? Because I believe Zaslav thought he could use him as a popular influencer, and it hasn't worked out that way. I would imagine that behind the scenes right now, Zaslav is seeing how things are playing out, and he's getting a bit nervous about James Gunn. Will he kind of be reactive and get rid of Gunn before he even releases one piece of content? It will be very, very interesting. But yeah, so that's how I measure DC movies. It's from Aquaman and beyond. So for me, there's only been to be fair, 3 really good movies since Aquaman. Aquaman, The Suicide Squad, and Black Adam is certainly in places as epic as the first Aquaman movie. They're the only 3 movies, right, including James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Black Adam and Aquaman, that are worth a saw, right? So Black Adam is deemed as a flop, even though I think if you actually look at the details of Black Adam, it probably did make a slight profit, unlike James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which was probably a more expensive movie than Black Adam, if you look at the details deeply of that as well. And so in terms of Blue Beetle, it's slightly better. I would say it might be as good or even slightly better than the first Shazam. It's definitely better than the other movies apart from the Suicide Squad and Black Adam. And I think if we don't include Aquaman, I think Black Adam is the best DCEU movie since Aquaman. And I think that Blue Beetle will be enjoyed by some, will be gaslit by others, and this is kind of the arena we're in. I would give this movie, and it's a difficult rating, it really is. I think if I give this movie at most 6 out of 10, I would be being charitable, but also fair, because I don't want to be disrespectful. It's a shame about the extremism that went into this movie. Now, again, I'm not Latinx, but I think they did try to represent, the Latino community well. And, the director, Luis Mano Soto, is Latinx, so he does know what it is like to be, a Latino. So I'm sure he tried to represent that community as accurately as possible. But here's the problem. This film could ultimately just attract the Latino community, and that's not good enough. Because white people have been, have dominated the big screen and entertainment in general. But here's the thing. America is part of the Western culture. And, the people who come from America and the Western culture are predominantly white. America, right? I know America started with the natives and then they brought slaves over and all of those histrionics. I understand that's problematic. But predominantly, America, when basically the British Empire came in, those people were mostly white. So that's the reason there was mostly white people making films and starring in films. Makes sense, right? That people from that country were predominantly involved in making movies, right? So I don't have any problem with representation and inclusion. But the problem is there's got to be a balance between politics, identity politics, inclusion and representation, and good entertainment.